The scent hit him first, copper and fear, threaded through with something sharper. Silver. Alpha King Matthias Blackthorn swung down from his warhorse before the animal fully stopped, his boots striking the cobblestones of the palace courtyard with enough force to crack stone. Around him, his warriors were still dismounting, their armour caked with blood and dirt from 3 days of fighting rogue packs at the northern border. But Matthias heard none of it. Pain lanced through his chest, not his own. Small, terrified. Dual, his twins. Caden, Ilara. Their names ripped from his throat as he ran. The bond between alpha and offspring was sacred, unbreakable. Right now it screamed with a terror no 5-year-old should know. He followed it like a beacon, his wolf surging forward, taking the marble steps 3 at a time. Servants scattered. He didn't see them. The West Tower, the abandoned West Tower. His blood turned to ice. No one had used those rooms in decades. The door was silver reinforced, meant to contain the feral wolves of old. The metal burned his palms as he gripped the handle, but he didn't care. His children were inside. The lock shattered under his hands, silver searing through his skin as he tore the door from its hinges. The smell of burnt flesh, his own, filled the stairwell. "Papa," Ilara's voice thin and broken. Matthias burst into the upper chamber and froze. His children huddled in the corner, their clothes torn, small arms and legs covered in angry red welts that wept silver poison. Caden's face was buried against his sister's shoulder, his whole body shaking. But between them and the door sat a woman Matthias had never seen before. She was small, delicate even, with sunset-coloured hair that fell in waves down her back. An omega. He could tell from her scent, soft and unassuming. She wore the simple grey dress of a palace servant, but her hands glowed with a light that had no earthly source, golden and warm, and she was humming. The song was old, ancient, something from before the Great War, when wolves still remembered magic. "Don't move," the omega said without looking up. Her voice was quiet but firm. "The silver is deep. I need another minute." Matthias should have grabbed her, demanded answers, thrown her in the dungeons for daring to touch the royal heirs without permission. Instead he stood transfixed as that golden light pulsed from her fingertips, flowing over Caden's arm. The welts faded. Not completely, but enough that his son's whimpers eased. "Who are you?" Matthias managed. "Almost done." The omega shifted to Ilara, placing both hands on the worst of the burns along the little girl's shoulder. "Breathe with me, sweetling. In and out. There you go." Ilara's eyes, grey like his own, found his face. "Papa," the lady came. She heard us crying. "Sarah heard us," Caden whispered, when no one else did. The omega, Sarah, finally looked up. Her eyes were amber, bright and defiant, and they met his without a trace of the submission most omegas showed an alpha king. She should have lowered her gaze. She should have bared her throat. She did neither. "Your Majesty." She inclined her head, barely. "I work in the kitchens. I heard the children crying from the servant quarters." Her jaw tightened. "For hours. No one came." "How did you get through a silver lock?" "I didn't." Sarah pulled her hands back, the golden light fading. "The door was sealed from the outside, but there's a service passage behind the pantry that connects to this tower. It hasn't been used in years, but the entrance was open." Matthias's wolf snarled. Someone had locked his children in here with silver and made sure they couldn't escape. Someone had left them to suffer. "Papa, don't be mad at Sarah," Ilara said quickly. She grabbed the omega's hand, holding tight. She made the hurting stop. She sang to us. Caden nodded, still pressed against the omega's side. "She smells nice, like the garden at night." Matthias opened his mouth to respond, but the click of heels on stone stopped him. "Matthias, you've returned." Queen Vivian stood in the doorway, immaculate as always, in a gown of deep purple. Her blonde hair was swept up, not a strand out of place, and her blue eyes were cold as winter frost. She looked at the scene before her, the broken door, the Omega, the children, and her lips thinned. "I see you've met the help." The mate bond between them pulsed, and Matthias felt it like a wound that wouldn't heal. 6 years married, 6 years of political alliance between her pack and his kingdom. 6 years of emptiness where love should have been. "Vivian," his voice came out harder than he intended. "Why were our children locked in the West Tower? With Silver? Disciplining them." She waved a hand dismissively. "They've been impossibly disobedient lately, refusing their lessons, talking back to their tutors. I merely ensured they had time to reflect on their behaviour." "With Silver." Matthias took a step forward. His wolf was barely contained now, rage building behind his ribs. "They're 5 years old. And royalty. They need to learn." "They're children." Vivian's eyes flashed. "Don't take that tone with me. You weren't here. You never are. Someone has to maintain order in this palace while you're off playing soldier at every border skirmish." Sarah stood slowly, placing herself between the Queen and the twins. It was subtle, but Matthias saw it. So did Vivian. "And you?" The Queen's gaze cut to the Omega. "What is a kitchen servant doing in the royal wing, touching the heirs without permission?" "I heard them crying." Sarah's voice didn't waver. "I couldn't ignore it. That wasn't your decision to make." Vivian's smile was sharp. "Guards, remove this Omega from—" "No." Matthias's command cracked through the air like a whip. The guards who'd started forward stopped. "Sarah saved our children from silver poisoning. She will not be punished." Vivian's nostrils flared. She overstepped, wildly. "There are protocols." "That you violated first by using silver on pups." Matthias bent down, scooping both children into his arms. They clung to him, and he could feel their exhaustion, their confusion. "We'll discuss this later. In private." The Queen's jaw clenched, but she nodded. "Of course, my king." As Matthias turned to leave, he looked back at Sarah. "My study. 1 hour. We need to talk about how you broke through that tower and what that light was." Sarah nodded. She didn't look afraid, even though she should have been. Even though questioning from the Alpha King could mean anything from exile to execution if he deemed her a threat. "Papa, don't send her away," Ilara whispered against his neck. "Please, she smells like moonflowers, like the mother in my dreams." Matthias's heart stuttered. Ilara had been having dreams lately. Dreams of a woman with kind hands and a warm voice, a woman who wasn't Vivienne. He carried his children down the tower stairs, Vivienne's footsteps echoing behind him. But his wolf was focused on something else entirely, on the woman still standing in that abandoned room, on her scent. Because beneath the simple Omega softness, beneath the herbs from the kitchen and the soap she'd used that morning, was something else. Something that made his wolf throw back its head and howl. It was impossible. He was already mated. Already marked. The bond with Vivienne was permanent, unbreakable by anything except death. But as Matthias walked away from that tower, away from the sunset-haired Omega with the defiant amber eyes, his entire body recognized what his mind refused to accept. That faint, impossible scent threading through everything else. The scent of a true mate bond. His wolf howled in recognition for the first time in 6 years, and deep in his chest. Something that had been dormant and cold began, impossibly, to wake. Chapter 2. The Alpha King study was nothing like Sarah had imagined. She'd expected grandeur, gold fixtures, elaborate tapestries, the sort of ostentatious displays of wealth that usually came with absolute power. Instead, the room was surprisingly simple, a large desk carved from dark wood. Shelves lined with books that looked actually read, their spines creased and worn. A fire burning low in the hearth. The only luxury was the view. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the moonlit gardens. Sarah stood in the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her simple grey dress. The fabric was clean but worn, marking her clearly as what she was, a servant. Yet she held herself straight, chin up. She'd learned long ago that dignity wasn't something anyone could take from you. You had to give it away. "Come in," Matthias said without looking up from the papers on his desk, and closed the door. She did, her footsteps silent on the thick rug. Up close, the Alpha King was even more imposing than he'd been in the tower. He'd cleaned up since this afternoon, the blood and dirt of battle washed away, but he still wore the evidence of what he'd done to save his children. Silver burns marked both palms, the flesh angry and red. They would scar. Silver always did. He caught her looking. They'll heal. Not fully, not without treatment. Sarah moved closer despite herself. "I could—" "No." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "I didn't call you here for healing. I called you here for answers." Matthias finally looked up, and the full weight of his grey eyes hit her like a physical force. This was an alpha in his prime, powerful and dangerous, and every instinct she had screamed at her to lower her gaze, to submit. She didn't. "How did you heal my children?" "I already told you I heard them crying." "That's not what I'm asking." He stood moving around the desk. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and when he got close enough, Sarah caught his scent. Pine and smoke and something darker, something that made her wolf stir restlessly. "I'm asking about the golden light, about the song you were singing, about how you pulled silver poison from their bodies when that kind of magic has been extinct for 70 years. Sarah's heart hammered. This was the moment she'd been dreading since he'd ordered her to his study, because the truth was dangerous. The truth could get her killed. But those children, Caden with his serious eyes and Ilara with her bright smile, they deserved better than lies. "It's not extinct," she said quietly, "just hidden." Matthias went very still. "Explain." "The purge." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire. 70 years ago, when the old king decided magic was too dangerous to exist, he hunted down every bloodline that carried it. The Moonspeakers, the Dreamwalkers, the Nightingales. She met his eyes. "My family." Understanding flickered across his face. "Nightingale, your name." "My grandmother was a healer, one of the last. She went into hiding when the purge began, took work in the kitchens of a minor pack house. She taught my mother. My mother taught me." Sarah's throat tightened. "We stayed in the lower ranks, servants, invisible, because invisible meant alive. And the healing? It's in the blood, passed down through generations." She held up her hands, watching them in the firelight. "It doesn't work on everything. Big injuries, diseases, old age, those are beyond me. But poisons, burns, wounds, if I catch them early enough, I can help." Matthias was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "Your family sacrificed everything to keep you safe." "They did." Sarah's eyes burned, but she blinked the tears back. "And I've spent my whole life pretending to be something I'm not. Until today, until I heard your children screaming and couldn't—" Her voice broke. "I couldn't pretend anymore." The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Then Matthias moved closer, so close Sarah could feel the heat radiating from his body, and something strange happened. The air between them changed. It was subtle at first, like the moment before lightning strikes, a pulling sensation deep in her chest. Her wolf pushed forward, urgent and insistent, and Sarah stumbled back a step. "What?" She pressed a hand to her sternum, where the feeling was strongest. "What is that?" Matthias had gone pale. "You feel it too?" "Feel what?" "The bond." He said it like a curse, like a prayer. "The mate bond." Sarah's world tilted. "That's impossible. You're already mated. To the Queen." "I know." He looked at his hands. The silver burns, the wedding band on his finger. I know. But the pull was undeniable, growing stronger with every second they stood near each other. Sarah could smell him now, really smell him, and everything in her screamed mine. Her wolf wanted to close the distance, to touch, to claim. She forced herself to take another step back. This can't happen. I'm aware. Matthias's voice was rough. Believe me, I'm aware. The sound of footsteps in the hall made them both freeze. A moment later, the door opened without a knock, and Queen Vivienne swept in. She was breathtaking. That was the first thing anyone noticed about Vivienne Blackthorne. Her beauty was the kind that looked carved from ice, perfect and cold. Tonight she wore blue silk that matched her eyes, and diamonds glittered at her throat. Her gaze moved from Matthias to Sarah and back again. Something flickered in her expression, something sharp. Am I interrupting? The words were pleasant enough, but the tone beneath them was acid. I was questioning the Omega about her abilities, Matthias said evenly, as I told you I would. How thorough of you. Vivienne moved to the desk, trailing one elegant hand across its surface. And what did you discover? Is she a threat? No. The answer came immediately. She saved Caden and Alara's lives. By overstepping her place. Vivienne's smile didn't reach her eyes. By using forbidden magic in the royal wing. Really, Matthias, you should be more concerned about security breaches. Sarah felt the anger rise in her throat, but swallowed it down. Queens could say anything. Kitchen Omegas could not. The only security breach, Matthias said slowly, was someone locking my children in a tower with silver and leaving them there to suffer. That's what concerns me. Vivienne waved a dismissive hand. We've been through this. Discipline is necessary. The children are too soft, too emotional. They need to learn strength. Her eyes found Sarah again. They certainly don't need some servant coddling them and undoing all my work. Your work. Matthias's voice dropped to something dangerous. Vivienne, they had silver welts, deep ones. That wasn't discipline. That was torture. Don't be dramatic. The Queen turned to face him fully now, and Sarah saw the calculation in her expression. They're royal heirs. They'll face worse than a few welts in their lifetime. Better they learn to endure pain now, while they're young. Besides, she smiled, our marriage united the Blackthorn and Silvercrest packs. It brought peace to the entire region. Surely a little firmness with the children is a small price to pay for stability. The reminder hung in the air. Matthias had married for alliance, not love. For peace, not passion. And Vivienne knew it. The children will be disciplined appropriately from now on, Matthias said. No more silver, no more locked towers. Of course, my king. Vivienne's tone suggested she agreed with nothing. She glanced at Sarah one more time, her eyes lingering just long enough to make a point. Will that be all? I have a dinner engagement with the Silvercrest ambassadors. That's all. Vivienne left in a whisper of silk, and the temperature in the room seemed to rise 10 degrees with her absence. Matthias closed his eyes. She's going to hurt them again. I know, Sarah surprised herself by speaking. That's why I need to tell you something. He looked at her sharply. I want to make a deal, Sarah said. I'll become the children's caretaker. Secretly, I'll watch over them, protect them, help them when they're hurt. But, she held up a hand before he could agree, you have to investigate what's really happening to them. What do you mean? Sarah took a deep breath. Those silver welts today, they weren't from discipline, Your Majesty. They were from systematic poisoning. The words landed like a blow. Matthias went very still. Explain. I've been watching. For months. Sarah's hands were shaking now, but she forced herself to continue. I noticed the children getting sick, weak, their skin breaking out in rashes that wouldn't heal. At first I thought it was just illness, but then I saw the pattern. It was always worse after meals, after their milk. You're saying someone is poisoning my children. Matthias's voice was deadly quiet. Not someone. Sarah met his eyes. Your wife? The silence that followed was absolute. That's... Matthias shook his head. Vivian is ambitious, cold, yes. But she wouldn't murder children, not her own stepchildren. They're not her children, Sarah said. That's the point. Your first wife, the twins' mother, she died 6 years ago, didn't she? And you remarried quickly, for politics. Matthias's jaw clenched. What does that have to do with... Everything. Sarah pulled a small cloth bundle from her pocket, setting it on his desk. Vivienne wants heirs of her own blood, strong ones. But as long as Caden and Ilara live, they're the crown prince and princess. They inherit. Any children she bears with you would be secondary. So you think she's killing them to make room for her own? I think she's weakening them. Silver in small doses. It doesn't kill quickly, but it makes wolves sick. Fragile. Weak enough that an accident wouldn't seem suspicious. Sarah unfolded the cloth, revealing 3 small glass vials. I've been collecting samples from the nursery, from their milk jugs. Look at the seals. Matthias picked up one of the vials, holding it to the light. Sarah watched his face as he saw it, the wax seal pressed into the stopper. A seal bearing the Queen's personal mark. This could be planted, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. You could be lying. I could be. Sarah didn't flinch. But I'm not. Test them. Have your royal physician test them. You'll find silver residue, not enough to kill immediately, but enough to cause suffering over time. Matthias set the vial down like it burned him. He moved to the window, staring out at the darkness. If this is true, if Vivian is doing this, it would mean war. The Silvercrest Pack would consider it an act of aggression if I moved against her. I know. It could tear the kingdom apart. I know. And you're asking me to risk everything on the word of a kitchen Omega I met 6 hours ago. Sarah lifted her chin. I'm asking you to protect your children, whatever the cost. For a long moment, Matthias said nothing. Then, if I agree to investigate this, if I bring you in as their secret caretaker, you'll need access to the royal wing, to the children's rooms. There's a network of servant passages, Sarah said. I can move through the palace unseen. And if you're caught? I won't be. Matthias turned to face her, and the weight of leadership sat heavy on his shoulders. All right, but carefully. If Vivian suspects anything... She won't. Sarah moved toward the door, then hesitated. Your Majesty, those burns on your hands. Let me at least ease the pain before I go. He started to refuse, but something in her expression stopped him. Slowly, he held out his palms. Sarah took his hands in hers, and the moment their skin touched, that pull between them roared to life. The mate bond, impossible and undeniable. She saw him feel it too, saw his eyes widen, his breath catch. Focus. She had to focus. The golden light came easier this time, flowing from her fingertips into the damaged flesh. The silver burns were deep, but she poured warmth into them, knitting tissue, easing pain. Matthias watched her face the entire time, and Sarah tried desperately to ignore how right this felt, how perfectly his hands fit in hers. When she finished, she pulled back quickly. There, they'll still scar, but they won't hurt as much. Thank you. Sarah nodded and turned toward the door, the real door this time, not the servants' passage. She'd taken 3 steps when Matthias spoke again. Sarah, why are you doing this? Really? You could have stayed invisible, safe. She looked back at him, this powerful Alpha King with his grey eyes and his wounded hands and his children who smelled like moonflowers. Because everyone deserves someone who'll hear them when they cry, she said simply, even princes and princesses. Then she was gone, slipping into the servants' corridor that connected to the study through a hidden panel. Matthias watched her disappear, his heart still racing from her touch, his mind reeling from everything she'd told him. Vivienne was poisoning his children. His true mate was a kitchen Omega with forbidden magic. The mate bond was real and growing stronger. His world was falling apart. Matthias sank into his chair, running his hands through his hair. He needed to think, to plan, to figure out how to protect Caden and Ilara without starting a civil war. His eyes fell on the desk, on a letter he hadn't noticed before. It must have been delivered while he was in the tower this afternoon. The seal was broken, someone had already opened it, and his name was written across the front in unfamiliar handwriting. Matthias unfolded the paper. The words swam before his eyes as he read them once, then again, unable to process what they said. Your Majesty, I write to you with urgent information about the Omega calling herself Sarah Nightingale. This woman is not what she appears. She is, in fact, Seraphina Silvermoon, the lost daughter of Alpha Damien Silvermoon, murdered 12 years ago in the Great Pack War. She is the last surviving heir of your kingdom's greatest enemy. The Silvermoon Pack has been searching for her for over a decade. If word spreads that she lives and that she resides in your palace, there will be those who demand she be executed for the crimes of her father. There will also be those who rally to her claim of the Silvermoon territory you seized after Damien's death. She is not just your political enemy's heir, Your Majesty. She is a threat to your entire kingdom. I suggest you act accordingly. A friend. The letter fell from Matthias's hands. Sarah Nightingale, Seraphina Silvermoon. His true mate was the daughter of the man he'd killed in battle 12 years ago. The heir to the pack he'd destroyed. The one person in the entire kingdom who had every reason to want him dead. And she'd just offered to protect his children. Chapter 3. The palace gardens were silver-washed under the full moon, every leaf and petal touched with light. Sarah walked the stone path between the rose beds, her breath misting in the cool night air. She shouldn't be here. It was past midnight. Well beyond the hours a kitchen servant should be wandering the royal grounds. But the message had been clear. Meet me in the gardens. We need to talk. She found him by the fountain, standing with his back to her, hands clasped behind him. Even in the darkness, she would have known him. The breadth of his shoulders, the way he held himself, coiled tension barely contained. Your Majesty, she kept her voice low. Matthias turned, and the moonlight caught his face. He looked like he hadn't slept, like he'd aged 10 years in the 6 hours since she'd left his study. Don't. His voice was rough. Don't call me that. Not right now. Sarah's stomach dropped. He knew. Somehow, he knew. Who told you? She asked quietly. Does it matter? Matthias moved closer, and she saw the anger in his eyes, but also confusion, betrayal, pain. Is it true? Are you Seraphina Silvermoon? There was no point in lying. She'd known this moment would come eventually. She'd just hoped it wouldn't be so soon. Yes. The word hung between them like a blade. Your father. Matthias's jaw worked. Alpha Damien Silvermoon. He led the rebellion 12 years ago, tried to overthrow the crown. That's what they say. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. I was 12 when it happened, when they came. When who came? I don't know. The memory still hurt, even after all these years. It was night, the harvest moon, like the one coming up. I was in bed when I heard the screaming. My father told me to run, to hide in the secret passages beneath our pack house. I did. I hid like a coward while my entire family was slaughtered. Her voice cracked, and she hated herself for it, for showing weakness. But the images were there, always there, waiting in the dark corners of her mind. Blood on white stone. Her mother's scream cut short, the smell of smoke and silver and death. They burned everything, she continued. The pack house, the territory markers, even the gardens my mother loved. By morning, there was nothing left. No bodies to bury. No survivors to mourn them. Just me, hiding in the dark like a rat. Matthias was quiet for a long moment. The official report said your father attacked first, that he was planning to assassinate the king during the peace talks. I know what the reports say. Sarah met his eyes. I also know my father. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a traitor. He wanted reform, yes, changes to how the packs were governed. But murder? Rebellion? No. Someone set him up. And you think that someone was me? My father? I don't know. The truth of it burned. For years I thought so. The Blackthorns gained the most from my pack's destruction. You absorbed our territory, our resources. It made sense. She took a shaky breath. But then I came here, started watching you, and you're not what I expected. What did you expect? A monster. The admission felt like pulling glass from a wound. Someone cruel and calculating. Someone who would lock children in a tower with silver. But that's not you, is it? That's her. Matthias closed his eyes. Vivian. I didn't know you were my mate, Sarah said quickly. Not until yesterday, I swear it. I came to this palace looking for answers about my family's death. I took work in the kitchens because it was the only way to get inside, to observe, to learn. And then, her throat tightened. Then I heard Caden and Ilara crying, and none of the rest of it mattered any more. You expect me to believe that? But his voice lacked conviction. You expect me to trust the daughter of my enemy? No. Sarah stood straighter. I don't expect you to trust me, but I'm asking you to trust what you've seen. I love those children. I would die before I let harm come to them. That's not a lie. That's not manipulation. That's just true. The fountain burbled behind them, filling the silence. A night bird called from somewhere in the trees. Matthias studied her face, like he was trying to read a map written in a foreign language. Show me, he said finally. Show you what? Your wolf, your true form. His eyes glinted in the moonlight. The silver moon line had silver fur, didn't they? I want to see if you're really who you claim to be. Sarah's heart hammered. Shifting was intimate, vulnerable. She hadn't shown her wolf to anyone since before the massacre. But she understood what he was asking. Proof. Truth in a form that couldn't be faked. She stepped back, closed her eyes and let the change take her. It always hurt, but tonight it hurt worse, like her body was resisting, like some part of her knew this was a mistake. But she pushed through it, feeling bones reshape, muscles realign, fur sprout along her skin. When she opened her eyes again, the world was sharper, brighter, full of scents and sounds her human form couldn't catch. She heard Matthias's sharp intake of breath. Sarah looked down at her paws, at the fur that covered them. Not grey or brown or black like most wolves. Silver. Pure silver. Like moonlight made solid. Gods. Matthias took a step forward, then stopped himself. You really are a silver moon. Sarah shifted back, grateful when the change left her dress mostly intact. Some things about magic were merciful. I've been hiding it my whole life, she said, staying human as much as possible, because silver fur is a death sentence for someone in hiding. Matthias ran a hand through his hair. He looked lost, and Sarah realized with a start that this powerful Alpha King had no idea what to do. He was trapped between duty and desire, between the past and the present, between his head and his heart. I should arrest you, he said, lock you up, question you properly. There are people in this kingdom who would demand your execution just for existing. I know, but I can't. The words came out rough. Because you're right. You've shown my children more love in 2 days than Vivian has in 6 years, because everything you've told me about the poisoning makes sense. And because... He stopped. Because of the mate bond. Sarah finished softly. Yes. He looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was naked. Because some part of me recognizes you, even though my mind screams that I shouldn't. Even though you're the daughter of a man my father may have murdered. May have, Sarah repeated. You don't know for sure. No, I don't. Matthias moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. My father died 5 years ago. He took his secrets with him, but I know he was capable of terrible things. All alphas are, when they think it's necessary. Are you? The question hung between them. Matthias held her gaze. I don't know, he admitted. I hope not. But I've killed in battle, ordered executions, made hard choices that cost lives, so maybe I'm capable of anything, given the right circumstances. Sarah reached out without thinking, placing her hand over his heart. She felt it beating, strong and steady. You saved your children today, she said, burned your hands on silver to reach them. That's who you are, not some hypothetical monster, the man standing in front of me. Matthias covered her hand with his own, the touch sent sparks racing up her arm, the mate bond singing between them. We need a plan, he said. If Vivian really is poisoning Caden and Ilara, we need to stop her. But carefully. The Silvercrest pack would consider any move against their alpha's daughter an act of war. Then we gather proof first. Sarah's mind was already racing. Enough that even her pack can't deny it. I'll keep collecting samples, documenting everything, and I'll protect the children, teach them how to recognize silver poisoning, how to resist it. You'll need more access to them. I can use the servant passages? No. Matthias shook his head. Too risky. If you're caught sneaking around the royal wing, Vivian will have grounds to arrest you. We need a legitimate reason for you to be near them. He thought for a moment. I'll assign you as their personal attendant, officially. You'll report directly to me, not to the Queen. She'll never allow that. She doesn't have a choice. I'm still the king. His voice hardened. And my children's safety comes before politics. Sarah wanted to argue, to tell him it was too dangerous, but the thought of being able to watch over Caden and Ilara openly, without hiding, it was too tempting. All right, she agreed, but if this goes wrong, it won't. Famous last words, Sarah thought. But she nodded anyway. In the Queen's private chambers, Vivian stood at her window, watching the gardens below. She couldn't see the details from this distance, but she could see enough. 2 figures by the fountain, standing too close, talking too long. You were right. She didn't turn from the window. He's meeting with the Omega. Behind her, Demon Frost moved like a shadow. He was her beta, officially, her lover secretly, and the father of the child currently growing in her belly, though no one, especially not Matthias, knew that yet. I told you she was a problem, Demon said. His voice was smooth as honey, deadly as nightshade. She's been watching the children for months, getting close to them. Too close. Vivian's hand tightened on the window frame. And now Matthias is protecting her, defending her. I saw the way he looked at her earlier, like she was something precious. The mate bond. Demon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. His hand splayed over her still flat stomach. He's feeling the pull. It happens sometimes, even when someone is already marked. It shouldn't happen to my husband. Vivian leaned back against him, but her eyes never left the garden. I gave up everything for this marriage. My pack, my freedom, my first love. She turned her head, pressing a kiss to Damon's jaw. I won't let some kitchen Omega take what's mine. Then we accelerate the plan, Demon murmured. The Harvest Moon celebration is in 3 days. Everyone will be distracted. The feast, the ceremonies, the full moon hunts. Perfect timing for an accident. Vivian smiled. The children's milk will be especially poisoned that night. Enough silver to kill them in their sleep. And when their bodies are found? Evidence will point to the Omega, Diamond finished. The vials you've been collecting, marked with her handwriting. The witnesses who've seen her sneaking into their rooms. It will look like she was sent by the remnants of the Silver Moon Pack to take revenge on the Blackthorn heirs. Perfect. Vivian turned in his arms, pressing herself against him. And once those weak pups are gone, once Matthias is grieving and vulnerable, our child will be the only heir. The kingdom will be ours. Demon kissed her deep and possessive. You're brilliant. I know. She pulled back, her eyes glittering. Matthias married me for alliance, for peace. But he's about to learn that peace comes at a price. And I always collect what I'm owed. Over the next 2 days, Sarah's world shifted. Matthias made the announcement during the morning council meeting. Sarah Nightingale was to be the Royal Children's personal attendant, effective immediately. The court reacted with shock. Omegas rarely rose above servant positions, but no one dared question the Alpha King's decision, not to his face. Vivian had been furious, of course. Sarah saw it in the tightness around her eyes, the way her smile never quite reached her face. But the Queen played her part well, agreeing graciously in public while no doubt plotting revenge in private. But for Sarah, the change was everything. She moved into a small room adjacent to the children's nursery. Nothing fancy. A bed, a wardrobe, a window overlooking the gardens. But it was hers. Private, safe, and most importantly, it gave her direct access to Caden and Ilara. The children were thrilled. "You're staying?" Ilara had asked, her grey eyes huge with hope. "Really staying?" "Really staying," Sarah confirmed, and the little girl had thrown herself into Sarah's arms with such force they'd both nearly toppled over. Caden was more reserved, but she saw the relief in his face, the way his small shoulders relaxed, like he'd been carrying a weight he could finally set down. Sarah spent every moment she could with them. She ate meals with them, played games, read stories. But she also taught them, carefully and gently, about silver. "It's a metal that hurts wolves," she explained one afternoon while they were in the garden. She held up a silver coin, keeping it at a safe distance. "See how it shines? If you ever see this in your food or drink, you don't touch it. You come find me, or your papa immediately." "Why does it hurt us?" Caden asked, his brow furrowed. "Because we're magic," Sarah said simply. "And silver is magic's opposite, like water and fire. They can't exist in the same space without fighting." "Does it hurt you too?" Ilara reached for Sarah's hand, concerned. "Yes, sweetling. All wolves." Sarah squeezed her small fingers. "That's why we have to be careful. That's why I need you both to promise me. If something tastes wrong, if you feel sick after eating, you tell me right away. All right?" They both nodded solemnly. That night, as Sarah was tucking them into bed, Caden looked up at her with serious eyes. "I wish you were our mama," he said quietly. "Instead of her." Sarah's heart cracked. "Oh, sweetheart." "You're nice," he continued. "You don't hurt us. You sing pretty songs. And you smell like moonflowers, like Ilara said." "Our real mama died," Ilara added, snuggling deeper into her blankets. "Papa said she was beautiful and kind, like you." Sarah had to blink back tears. "Your mama loved you very much, I'm sure of it. But she's gone." Caden's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sarah heard the pain beneath it. "And you're here, so can you be our mama now, please?" Sarah didn't know what to say, how to explain that wanting something and having it were different things, that she was nobody, nothing, and they were royalty. "I can't replace your mother, but I can promise I'll always take care of you, no matter what." Ilara smiled, already half asleep. "That's what mamas do." The next morning, Sarah found a drawing on her bedside table, stick figures in crayon. A tall man with a crown, 2 small children and a woman with long red hair. They were holding hands, smiling. At the top, in Ilara's careful handwriting, "Our family." Sarah pressed the drawing to her chest and let herself cry. Matthias watched from the doorway as Sarah braided Ilara's hair, the little girl chattering happily about a butterfly she'd seen in the garden. Caden sat nearby, reading a book. But every few minutes he'd look up at Sarah with an expression of such contentment it made Matthias's chest ache. This was what a family should look like: warm, easy, full of love. Everything his marriage to Vivian wasn't. "Your Majesty." The voice came from behind him, Marcus, his beta and closest friend. "We need to talk." Matthias followed Marcus to a private alcove down the hall. His beta looked troubled, his jaw tight. "What is it?" "I've been investigating the Silver Moon massacre," Marcus said quietly, "like you asked, digging through old records, talking to veterans who were there." He paused. "I found something you need to know." Matthias's stomach dropped. "Tell me." "It wasn't your father who ordered the attack." The words didn't make sense at first. Matthias had spent 12 years believing, or at least suspecting, that his father had orchestrated the Silver Moon Pack's destruction. It was the logical conclusion. The Blackthorns had gained the most from it. "Then who?" he asked. Marcus met his eyes. "Vivian's father, Alpha Roland Frost of the Frost Ridge Pack." The ground tilted beneath Matthias's feet. "What?" "I found payment records, secret ones hidden in the old military accounts. Roland Frost paid mercenaries, rogue wolves with no pack loyalty, to attack the Silver Moons during the Harvest Moon. He made it look like a spontaneous rebellion gone wrong." Marcus's voice hardened. He eliminated the Silver Moons because they were political rivals, because Damien Silvermoon was pushing for reforms that would have limited the power of packs like Frostridge, and because he wanted to secure a marriage alliance between his daughter and me, Matthias finished. The pieces were falling into place, horrible and clear. With the Silver Moons gone, Vivian became the most politically advantageous match. "Exactly." Marcus looked grim. "Your father suspected, I think, but he couldn't prove it. And by the time he might have acted, he was already dying. The cancer took him before he could set things right." Matthias leaned against the wall, his mind reeling. Sarah's family, her entire pack, had been murdered to pave the way for his marriage. The mate bond he was fighting was with the daughter of a man who'd been wronged, betrayed, slaughtered for political convenience. And Vivian, his wife, her father had orchestrated it all. "Does Vivian know?" he asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But given what Sarah's told you about the poisoning, she knows." Matthias's voice was flat. "Or at least suspects. That's why she's so desperate to eliminate Caden and Elara. Not just to make room for her own heirs, but to tie me to her completely, to make sure I can never undo the alliance her father died to create." "What are you going to do?" Matthias pushed off the wall. "What I should have done the moment I found those vials. I'm going to protect my children, and I'm going to end this marriage, alliance or no alliance. The Silvercrest Pack will consider it an act of war. Then let them." Matthias's eyes were hard. "I won't sacrifice my children for peace, not anymore." That evening, Sarah was in the garden again. She couldn't help it. Something about the moonlight, the cool air, the quiet. It reminded her of before, of when life was simpler and she had a family and a home. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Matthias's voice came from behind her. "It's not safe." She turned. He stood at the edge of the path, half in shadow, and he looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I heard about your beta's discovery," she said quietly. "About my father. About Vivian's father. I'm sorry." The words were raw. "For what was done to your family. For the part my father played, even if it was just through inaction. For everything." Sarah moved closer. "It wasn't your fault. It was my family's responsibility, my father's duty to protect all the packs, not just the ones politically convenient." Matthias's hands curled into fists. "And I married the daughter of the man who killed your entire pack. I brought her into my home, gave her access to my children. You didn't know." "I should have." He looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was naked. "I should have asked more questions, investigated. But I was young and stupid and grieving my first wife, and I let myself be maneuvered into a political marriage that's poisoned everything it's touched. Matthias, I'm going to end it," he said. "The marriage, the alliance, all of it. I'll face whatever consequences come, but I won't let Vivian hurt Caden and Elara any more." Sarah's breath caught. "That's dangerous." "I know." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "But I'm done choosing politics over my children, over what's right, over—" He stopped, his eyes searching her face. "Over you. The air between them changed, charged. The mate bond thrummed, stronger than ever, pulling them together like gravity. "We can't," Sarah whispered, but she didn't step back. "You're married. I'm my mate." The words were fierce, final. "You're my mate, Sarah. The bond doesn't lie, and I'm done fighting it." He reached up, cupping her face in his scarred hands. Sarah's eyes fluttered closed, and when his lips met hers, the world caught fire. The kiss was everything, desperate and gentle, claiming and questioning, full of all the words they hadn't said and all the feelings they'd been denying. Sarah's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Matthias made a sound low in his throat that sent heat racing through her veins. This was rightness. This was home. This was what the mate bond had been trying to tell them all along. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Matthias rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever happens next," he said, "we face it together." Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. High above them, in her tower window, Vivian watched. She stood with Daimon at her side, his hand on her waist, and she watched the Alpha King kiss a kitchen Omega in the moonlight. She didn't scream, didn't rage. Instead, she smiled. A cold, terrible smile that never reached her eyes. Slowly, deliberately, she reached out to the vase on the windowsill and plucked a single white moonflower from the arrangement. She crushed it between her fingers, letting the petals fall like snow. "Let the true games begin," she whispered. Demon pulled her closer, his lips at her ear. "They have no idea what's coming." "No," Vivienne agreed. "They don't." The harvest moon celebration was in one day, and by the time it ended, the Blackthorn heirs would be dead. The Omega would be blamed, and Vivienne's path to the throne would be clear. She just had to be patient, a little longer. Chapter 4. The palace glittered like a jewel box under the full harvest moon. Every corridor blazed with light, every window thrown open to let in the crisp autumn air. The celebration had been building for days. Nobles arriving from distant territories, servants preparing elaborate feasts, decorations transforming the great hall into something out of a fairy tale. Now, as night fell and the moon rose full and heavy, the entire kingdom gathered to honour the old ways. Sarah stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, watching the crowd with sharp eyes. She wore a new dress, pale blue silk that Matthias had sent to her room that morning with a note. "You're more than a servant now. Dress like it." The fabric felt strange against her skin, too fine, too delicate. She preferred her simple grey cotton, but she understood the message. Tonight, she needed to look like she belonged here, like she had the right to stand near the royal heirs. Speaking of whom, Sarah, Ilara tugged on her hand, practically bouncing with excitement. "Look at all the people and the food. Can we try the honey cakes?" "After I taste them first," Sarah said automatically. She'd been tasting everything that came near the children for 2 days now. Every drink, every morsel. So far, nothing had been poisoned, but she didn't trust it. Especially not tonight, when Vivian had been smiling too much and watching too closely. Caden stood on her other side, more reserved but no less curious. Papa said there will be dancing later and a hunt at midnight when the moon is highest. "That's right." Sarah smoothed his dark hair. "You two will be in bed long before then, though." "But Sarah," Ilara started. "No arguments." Sarah kept her voice gentle but firm. "The moon energy is strong tonight. You'll feel it pulling at your wolves. It's better if you're safe in your rooms where I can watch over you." Both children nodded, accepting her authority in a way they never had with Vivienne. It made Sarah's heart swell and break at the same time. They shouldn't have to fear their own stepmother. They shouldn't have to rely on a former kitchen Omega for protection. But here they were. "There you are." Matthias's voice cut through the noise of the crowd. He appeared at Sarah's elbow, resplendent in formal black with silver threading at the collar, the Alpha King in all his glory. Several nearby nobles bowed as he passed, and Sarah felt the weight of their stares when he stopped beside her instead of his queen. "Your Majesty," she murmured, "I told you to call me Matthias." His eyes found hers, warm and steady. In public, they had to maintain distance, propriety. But the mate bond hummed between them, stronger every day. "Have you found anything?" "Not yet, but she's planning something. I can feel it." "So can I." Matthias glanced across the room to where Vivienne held court, surrounded by nobles. She wore white tonight, always white, like she was some kind of innocent, and diamonds dripped from her throat and ears. She looked like a queen from a storybook, beautiful and cold and perfect. She was also a murderer. "Stay close to the children," Matthias said quietly. "If anything feels wrong." "I know." Sarah's hand dropped to Ilara's shoulder. "I won't let them out of my sight." The feast began shortly after. Long tables groaned under the weight of roasted meats, fresh bread, autumn vegetables, and elaborate desserts. Sarah sat with the children at a side table, not quite with the royal family, but close enough to see everything. She tasted their food 3 times before letting them eat. Both children were used to it by now and waited patiently. The meal progressed without incident. Toasts were made, songs were sung. The moon climbed higher, and Sarah felt her wolf stirring restlessly. Full moons always made wolves edgy, eager to run and hunt. She pushed the feeling down, focusing on her charges. Then Vivienne stood. The queen rose gracefully from her seat at the high table, lifting a delicate silver tray. On it sat 6 small cakes, perfectly decorated with white frosting and crystallized violets. "A moment, please." Vivienne's voice carried across the hall, trained and musical. "Before we begin the evening's entertainments, I wanted to do something special for my dear stepchildren." Sarah's blood ran cold. Vivienne walked down from the dais, the crowd parting before her like water. She stopped in front of Caden and Ilara, smiling that perfect smile. "These are mooncakes," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A traditional recipe passed down through my family. I made them myself this afternoon with my own hands as a gesture of love for my husband's children." She set the tray on the table. "Please, enjoy them." The children looked at Sarah uncertainly. Around them, nobles watched, waiting. This was a public moment, a show of maternal devotion. Refusing the cakes would be an insult. "How thoughtful." Sarah kept her voice light as she reached for one of the cakes. "Let me just—" "No need." Vivienne's hand shot out, gripping Sarah's wrist. Her fingers were ice cold. "They're perfectly safe. Unless you're suggesting I would poison my own stepchildren?" She looked around the hall, playing to the crowd. What an ugly accusation that would be. Sarah met her eyes. In them, she saw triumph, challenge. "Go ahead," those eyes said. "Make a scene. Call me a murderer in front of the entire kingdom. See what happens." "Of course not, Your Majesty." Sarah pulled her hand back slowly. "I simply wanted to try one myself. They look delicious." "Then by all means." Vivienne gestured to the tray. "Take whichever you like." Sarah reached for the cake closest to her, but even before she touched it, she smelled it. Beneath the sugar and vanilla and frosting was something else, something metallic and wrong. Silver. Not a trace amount. Not the small doses Vivienne had been using before. This was lethal. Enough to kill a grown wolf, let alone 2 small children. "Actually," Sarah began, "is there a problem?" Vivienne's voice sharpened. "You're acting very strangely, Miss Nightingale, almost as if you're afraid of something." The crowd murmured. Sarah felt the trap closing around her. If she accused Vivienne now, without proof, it would be her word against a queen's. She'd be arrested, executed, and the children would still die. But if she let them eat the cakes, "There's no problem." Sarah picked up the cake, holding it carefully. "I just remembered I have a terrible sweet tooth. May I take this to my room for later? How rude. Vivian's smile never wavered. To refuse a gift meant for the children. But I suppose we can't expect proper manners from someone of your background. The insult hung in the air. Several nobles laughed softly. Sarah can have mine, Ilara said suddenly, her small voice clear in the quiet. I'm not very hungry anyway. Nor am I, Caden added, taking his sister's hand. Vivienne's eyes flashed. Just for a second, the mask slipped, and Sarah saw pure hatred underneath. How disappointing. The Queen picked up the tray, balancing it on one hand. I went to such trouble, but children can be so ungrateful. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Miss Nightingale, I've been meaning to speak with you, privately. There are some concerns that have been brought to my attention. Sarah's stomach dropped. Concerns, Your Majesty? Yes. Vivian's smile was poisonous. About your conduct, your presence near the Alpha King, your inappropriate closeness with the royal children. Some might even call it witchcraft. She let the word hang. I think a formal inquiry is necessary, don't you? The room went deadly quiet. Witchcraft. The accusation was ancient, brutal, and almost impossible to disprove. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Matthias was faster. That's enough, Vivienne. The Alpha King rose from his seat, and the command in his voice made several wolves drop their gazes. Sarah is under my protection. There will be no inquiry. I'm afraid that's not your decision, husband. Vivienne turned to face him, and her voice rang out clear and strong. By the old laws, the laws written into this kingdom's founding. Any member of the pack may challenge another if they believe dark magic is being used. And I, Queen Vivian Blackthorn, formally challenge Sarah Nightingale to trial by combat. The crowd erupted. Voices rose, shocked and excited. Trial by combat was rare, almost unheard of in modern times. But the law was clear, ancient and unbreakable. Sarah felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. No. Matthias's voice cut through the noise. I forbid it. You can't. Vivian looked at the gathered nobles, at the council members seated near the high table. Can he, council? Lord Brennan, the oldest council member, stood slowly. He looked uncomfortable, but resolute. The law is clear, Your Majesty. A challenge issued must be answered. The accused can fight or face immediate execution without trial. This is madness, Matthias snarled. Sarah is an Omega. Vivian is an Alpha-born queen. It's not a fair fight. Then she should have thought of that before practicing witchcraft. Vivian's voice was silk over steel. The challenge is issued. What say you, Miss Nightingale? Will you fight? Or will you die? Every eye in the hall turned to Sarah. She felt their weight, their judgment, saw the trap closing from all sides. Vivienne had planned this perfectly. Either Sarah died in combat, or she died by execution. Either way, the children would be left unprotected. Unless. Sarah looked at Matthias, saw the desperation in his eyes, the helpless rage. She thought of Caden and Ilara waiting for her answer. Thought of her parents, her pack, everyone she'd lost. And she thought of the silver wolf that lived inside her, the silver moon heritage she'd spent 12 years hiding. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. I accept the challenge, Sarah said clearly. The crowd roared. The ceremonial combat ring was outside, in the great courtyard beneath the full moon. Ancient stones marked its boundaries, a perfect circle 50 feet across. Torches burned at the cardinal points, casting dancing shadows. Sarah stood at one end, her new dress already stripped away, wearing only a simple shift. Around her, the entire kingdom watched. Hundreds of faces in the torchlight, excited and bloodthirsty. At the other end of the ring stood Vivienne, still in her white gown, but with her feet bare. She looked like an avenging angel. Matthias stood outside the ring, held back by tradition and law. He couldn't interfere. No one could. This was between the accused and the accuser. "You don't have to do this," he'd said to her before they walked out. "We'll find another way." There is no other way. Sarah had touched his face, memorizing it. If I run, I'm guilty. If I refuse, I die. At least this way, I have a chance. She's stronger than you, faster. She's been training since birth. I know. Sarah had smiled sad and fierce. But I have something she doesn't. What? Something worth fighting for. Now, standing in the ring, Sarah felt the moon's pull like a physical thing. Her wolf surged forward, eager and angry after so many years of suppression. The chief council member stepped forward, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "By the ancient laws, this trial shall determine truth. The accused, Sarah Nightingale, stands charged with witchcraft and corruption. The accuser, Queen Vivian Blackthorn, demands satisfaction. Let the combat begin." Vivian didn't wait. She shifted immediately, her body exploding into fur and muscle. Her wolf was massive, easily twice the size of a normal female, pure white with ice blue eyes, beautiful and terrible. The crowd gasped. Several people screamed, but Sarah saw what they didn't, saw the wrongness in Vivian's wolf, the way shadows clung to her fur, the way the moonlight seemed to bend away from her. Dark magic, just like Vivian had accused Sarah of using. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so deadly. Vivian's wolf snarled, lips pulling back from fangs the size of daggers. She charged. Sarah closed her eyes. Let go of the fear. Let go of the hiding. Let go of everything except the truth of what she was. She shifted. The change ripped through her, faster than it ever had before. Bones realigned, muscles reformed, fur sprouted. When she opened her eyes again, the world was sharper, brighter, full of scents and sounds her human form couldn't catch, and the crowd went absolutely silent. Sarah stood in the ring in her true form for the first time in 12 years, a silver wolf with gold-flecked eyes, not massive like Vivian, but graceful, powerful, built for endurance and speed rather than brute strength. An alpha bloodline wolf, unmistakable, impossible to fake. Silver moon. Someone in the crowd breathed. Vivian's wolf skidded to a halt, surprise flickering across her bestial face. Then rage. Pure, incandescent rage. She attacked again, faster this time. Her jaws snapped for Sarah's throat. Sarah ducked, spinning away. She wasn't trying to kill, wasn't fighting with rage or hatred. She was fighting the way her father had taught her before he died, with precision, with purpose. Every move calculated to protect, to defend, to survive. Vivian was stronger, but Sarah was faster. They circled each other, trading blows. Vivian's claws raked across Sarah's shoulder, drawing blood. Sarah's teeth found purchase in Vivian's leg, making her stumble. The fight was brutal, vicious. Blood stained the ancient stones. But something was wrong. Sarah could feel it. Vivian was too strong, too fast. The dark magic that clung to her wasn't just for show. It was enhancing her, making her more than she should be. Vivian's jaws closed around Sarah's neck. Not quite a killing bite, but close. Pain exploded through Sarah's body. She tasted blood, her own. This was it. The end. "Sarah!" The scream cut through everything, high and terrified and achingly familiar. Ilara. The little girl broke through the crowd, running into the ring despite the guards trying to stop her. Caden was right behind her, both children's faces streaked with tears. "Leave her alone," Ilara shrieked. "Don't hurt her." And then something impossible happened. Ilara's small body convulsed. She screamed. But it wasn't pain. It was transformation. Light exploded around her, golden and pure, and when it faded, a tiny grey wolf stood where the 5-year-old girl had been. The crowd lost its mind. Children didn't shift until at least 12 years old, usually older. An early shift was a sign of immense power, of alpha blood running true. Vivian's wolf froze, stunned. Her jaws released Sarah's throat. It was all the opening Sarah needed. She surged forward, all her remaining strength behind the movement. Her teeth found Vivian's shoulder, her claws her flank. She drove the larger wolf backward, away from the children, using speed and desperation where she lacked raw power. Vivian fell, hit the ground hard. And Sarah's jaws closed around her throat, not biting, not yet, but there, poised. One move away from ending this. Vivian shifted back to human form, gasping. "Do it," she spat. "Kill me." "No." Sarah shifted too, her body aching and bloody. "You don't get to die a martyr." "Then what?" Vivian's eyes were wild. "You've already lost. Even if you win here, the kingdom will never accept a silver moon as enough." Matthias's voice cracked across the courtyard like thunder. He strode into the ring, and the authority rolling off him made every wolf present drop their gaze. Every wolf except Sarah. "This ends now." He looked at Vivian with nothing but contempt. "You've been exposed, Vivian, your crimes, your poison, your dark magic." He gestured to where Daman was being dragged forward by guards, his hands bound. "Your lover helped us understand everything." Vivian's face went white. "You're lying." "Am I?" Matthias pulled something from his pocket, vials. The same ones Zara had collected. Silver poison, marked with your seal. Found in the children's nursery, in the mooncakes you made tonight. He held them up so the crowd could see. "You tried to murder my heirs, your own stepchildren." The crowd's murmur turned angry. Murderous. "I did it for us." Vivian's composure finally cracked. "Those weak pups would have ruined everything. They're not strong enough to rule, not like the child I carry." She stopped, hand flying to her mouth, but it was too late. "The child you carry," Matthias repeated slowly, "with Damon, not with me." Vivian said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. "By the laws of this kingdom," Matthias said, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard, "I, Alpha King Matthias Blackthorne, formally reject Vivian Frost as my queen and mate. Her crimes are exposed, her betrayal complete, and her sentence." He looked at the council members, who nodded one by one. "Exile beyond the boundaries, stripped of her wolf, never to return." The punishment was worse than death, to be cast out, to lose one's wolf, to become human, weak, powerless. Vivian screamed, fought. But the guards held her, held Damon too when he tried to break free. And then Matthias turned to Sarah. She stood in the centre of the ring, still in her shift, still bleeding, still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Sarah Nightingale, Seraphina Silvermoon. He held out his hand. "I offer you what should have been yours from the beginning, the place at my side. Not just as my mate," he dropped to one knee and the entire kingdom gasped, "but as my queen, as the mother of my children, as the one who saved us all when no one else would." Sarah's vision blurred with tears. "Matthias." "Say yes," he whispered. "Please." She took his hand. "Yes." When she marked him, biting gently at the junction of his neck and shoulder, golden light exploded across the courtyard. It rolled outward like a wave, touching every person present. Warm, healing, pure. The true mate bond of an Alpha King and his healing queen. The crowd erupted into cheers, and two small voices rose above the rest. "Mama, Mama!" Caden and Ilara crashed into Sarah, wrapping their arms around her waist. Both of them were crying, laughing, holding on, like they'd never let go. "Mama," Ilara said again, pressing her face against Sarah's stomach. "Our real Mama." Sarah sank to her knees, pulling both children close. She wept openly, not caring who saw. "My babies," she whispered. "My sweet, brave babies." Matthias wrapped his arms around all three of them, and for the first time in 6 years, his family was complete. 3 months later, the coronation took place on a clear winter morning. Sarah stood on the dais in a gown of silver and gold, a crown of moonflowers resting on her sunset hair. Before her, representatives from every pack in the kingdom knelt: Blackthorn, Silvercrest, and yes, even the remnants of Silvermoon who'd emerged from hiding when they heard their lost princess lived. "Do you, Seraphina, Silvermoon Blackthorn, swear to rule with wisdom and compassion?" The high priestess's voice rang clear. "I do. To protect the weak and champion the innocent? I do. To unite the packs in peace and lead them in war? I do." The crown was placed on her head, and the kingdom roared its approval. Afterward, in the private gardens, Sarah sat beneath the moonflower vines with Matthias at her side. Caden and Elara played nearby, their laughter bright as bells. And Sarah's hand rested on her stomach, feeling the flutter of new life growing inside her. "Happy?" Matthias asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "More than I ever thought possible." Sarah leaned into him. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real." "Believe it." He covered her hand with his own, protective and possessive over their unborn child. "You're my queen, my mate, my everything." Elara ran over, throwing herself into Sarah's lap with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved. "Mama, sing the song, the one from before." "The lullaby?" Sarah smiled. "Yes." Caden joined them, snuggling against her other side. "We like that one." So Sarah sang. The ancient healing song that had saved 2 children in a tower, that had started everything. And as her voice rose soft and sweet in the winter air, carrying across the garden, Matthias watched his family, his true family, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. The Omega, who had refused to ignore their cries, had become the queen who saved them all, and their kingdom flourished under her light. The end. Thank you for watching and listening to this wonderful stories. Like, share and subscribe for more.